past presidents and my dear friends. I actually came prepared for a speech, but I thought I'll sing a song now. Perhaps that would be it. I'm delighted to be here this evening to see the progress that has been made by your chamber in the last 1 year, as well as to share a few thoughts with you on the strategic direction of the government in the next few years to come. I think your new president enumerated the challenges as well as the achievements of the recent past. But I think one of the most significant parts of this entire year was that we were able to stay stable. The enemy was unknown, and then we had to take some steps which were extraordinary. But at the same time, the resilience of our business leaders, of our entrepreneurs, as well as the country in general, was it could have been much worse. That's the bottom line. But I believe we were able to pull through a very, very difficult year with a reasonably good track record. And I think it's useful for us on and off to reflect on those achievements as well. Your president explained it in detail, so I won't go into it in further depth. But I think what was significant was that even in the worst of times, we were able to maintain our business as well as our macro fundamentals in reasonably good shape. Why do I say that? In the 5 years, 2015 to 2019, our macro fundamentals had taken a reasonable beating. And I must say that we could have achieved a lot more if not for the fact that our foundation was somewhat weak. Our rupee had been depreciating at the rate of around 6.8% per annum for 5 years running, and that was a tough situation to deal with. And on top of that, when we found that our key inflow of foreign exchange was threatened, particularly tourism, you could imagine what kind of a difficulty we would have been facing. We had $8.2 billion in reserves at the end of 2014. My friend Tilak was in the monetary board at that time, would vouch for that. But at the time that we took back the government with only $7.6 billion in reserves, when we should have had around 15 billion, you could realize what kind of a stress we could have been facing, and we were facing. But nevertheless, we'll take some tough measures, and I think many of you understood, although it was very painful for so many people, in the fact that we had to curtail imports. But if we did not do that, the depreciation of our currency would not have been the 2.6% that we finally ended up in the year 2020 with. It could have been a lot more. The prognosis was that good because of those tough decisions. But at the beginning, as soon as COVID struck, many people thought that it was going to be much worse. They would have expected the rupee to do a little further, and many also expected interest rates to rise. But as a government, the strategic thrust of our government was that we wanted to make it as easy as possible for the entrepreneurs as well as businesses and the industries to do their business better. So on that platform, we knew we had to keep interest rates at the lowest level possible so that it would be easier for you to face the risk. There's no greater risk than having to deal with an interest rate of 18-19%. and that could really be the toughest situation for our entrepreneurs to face. I remember when I was a young chartered accountant, we used to prepare feasibility studies for various projects. I'm sure some of you who are here remember as well. We used to factor in a depreciation of the currency of around 10%, which was the norm at that time. How many? You don't remember. We used to also say that the interest rates were 18-20%. So many projects became unviable in such macro fundamentals. So if you remember, from 2006 to 2014, one of the key thrusts of the strategy at that time was to maintain those macro fundamentals at reasonable, benign levels. We had to quickly get back to that situation. That's why you would have noticed from 2020, we were determined that those macro fundamentals are brought back, because that is the only way that we can have growth once again in our country. No one can grow if not for the fact that the platform is a stable one and it is a benign one. So even under the worst of circumstances, where we found export stuff, the tourism dwindling, we had some very resilient businesses who did not accept those as the conditions that we should falter on, but rather to build upon. So many people changed the strategies. So that is why our exports reduced by only $1 billion in the year 2020. Although many of the rating agencies jumped the gun and thought that we have a much higher deficit as far as our exports are concerned. Because we took the early steps as far as imports were concerned, which did cause some pain, I must admit. The imports reduced by about $3 billion for the year 2020. As a result, our trade deficit was actually lower by about $2 billion than the previous years, which put a very little pressure on the rupee, and that's why we were able to survive the almost zero tourism receipts that we had in the year 2020. Fortunately, the World Bank predictions of the remittances did not hold good, and they originally said that we'll have a 20% reduction in remittances, but we did find that it was actually the reverse, and we had about a 6% increase in the remittances, which was very helpful. So I think the platform is now set with the return of tourism, albeit gradually. We will find that Sri Lanka would once again be in a position to attain that 4 to 5% growth in the year 2021. And we must strive for it, because I believe the platform for our growth in the next 5 years will be based on how we manage the year 2021. That's why it's a vital year. That's why it's a year that we have to work very hard to ensure that our macro fundamentals remain strong, as well as our businesses remain robust, so that we can grow once again to the levels at which we were used to prior to 2015. I'm not in any way saying that's going to be easy. I think you also would have some tough times. We are beginning to gradually take steps to ease certain restrictions that have been placed, but those can sometimes be a little longer than we originally envisaged. You would have noticed that yesterday the central bank also took some steps to ensure that the speculation that was getting a little bit out of hand with regard to the rupee was curtailed. Because I think sooner or later we all will have to realize that we got to go in this boat together without rocking it too much. It's like in a stormy weather, we are all in a small boat which we need to keep carefully to go forward. If one or two people start jumping up and running up and down in the boat, the entire boat can capsize. So the captain has to decide at some stage, look, We have to make sure that everybody stays calm, and sometimes those practices that can be a little bit turbulent within the little boat will need to be curtailed in order that we all have a smooth ride. And that's what the central bank is doing. And I commended them for that, because I believe it's good for all of us to ride together in stormy waters without rocking the boat, so that we will be able to all go towards the journey and have a very peaceful journey. Now, where are we heading? We have set out very clearly in the vistas of splendor in the President's manifesto that we want to reach a level of 6.5% growth. We also want to ensure that our inflation rates stay benign. Now, all these should be good news to you, because your businesses also need to be now centered around that growth story of the government. At the same time, we are keen to ensure that the platform of infrastructure development continues unabated, notwithstanding the tough situation that we are facing. It's going to be tough, but at the same time, public investment will have to be at a reasonable level so that we can ensure that the infrastructure development keeps pace with that of the rest of the world. But we are also opening out the country. We have opened out new areas. The new law for the port city is coming in the next few weeks. That would ensure that recipients of investments can be taken by the country. Already we have had some very good responses. Even though with COVID, there are many people who have come and they are taking up positions, they are talking, they are understanding the level of commitment of the government as well as of the private sector, and we are confident that very soon those investments will materialize in real dollar terms. The Hambantota industrial zone is open. We have already seen one of the massive investments in the tire factory coming in. The iconic towers and the entrance to the port city have already been committed. There will be the new convention center to be built at the port city. All these are going to be big time investments on which the private sector can also take up their own positions in going forward. But at the same time, we don't want to neglect the SME sector. There are many areas that the SME sector needs support. And I think that's where the banks also have to come forward. But I don't think the banks alone would suffice. We need to have equity funds as well. In Sri Lanka, one of the biggest drawbacks for the fulfillment of these dreams has been that there has not been enough capital in our country. I'm happy that the stock exchange is taking the steps necessary to expand the amount of capital available as well as the recipient of capital to be there. But we would want to work closely with that, where there would be new areas for the SME sector to also take up positions in the stock exchange. There can be other types of capital that can come. Equity capital, not only the debt capital, which the banks can provide, but the equity capital, so that the banks also would see that there is a new pool of capital coming into the country. I think at least $2 or $3 billion needs to come in. We're working hard towards that to bring in that fresh infusion of capital into the country. And I'm confident that with those attempts that we are going to put in place, that we would have a new era for Sri Lanka with greater capital, greater opportunities, and greater amount of entrepreneurs being facilitated to do their business. The doing business indicators are being looked at by my ministry as well, and we are going to ensure that Sri Lanka will do better. That's a bit of a difficult task right now with COVID, but at the same time, we want to start on that journey to improve all these ways in which Sri Lanka does business. We have a lot to do. Some cases in our litigation takes 20 years. That day, the Minister of Justice was saying in Parliament that there are cases which have been pending in courts for 20, 22 years. I don't think anyone can do business in such a scenario. So we need to get those into action. More than 6 billion rupees was allocated this year to have new courts, new judges, more cases to be heard quickly so that cases can be disposed. That's just one example of where we have identified the bottlenecks and working towards that to make doing business better in our country. So with that, we are hoping overall that there will be a better private sector. In the public sector also there is a lot to be done. I have taken stock of the situation and I must tell you that the challenge is formidable. We have about 289 projects that are presently being handled by the government. Those total up to more than 5 trillion rupees, and we need to work on them to make sure that those are delivered on time and on budget. And I can assure you that we are working towards all those goals as well. The last point that I would like to leave with you, which was mentioned by your President as well, is that of the debt. There are many stories concerning the debt of our country, but I can tell you we have seen worse times. Tilak here will probably vouch for the fact that we did see a lot more stresses during the time when we had several challenges. The global recession, the war in our own country, dollar depreciating and appreciating and fluctuating, oil at $145 a barrel, banks crashing. Those are forgotten. Sometimes people have now forgotten that we had that kind of challenge. But we also made sure that those challenges didn't permeate down to all of you as well. But those were challenges we did face. In 2005, the debt to GDP ratio was 91%. They have forgotten that as well. We are again back at 91%. But even after all those projects that we did and the infrastructure development that happened and the way our country moved forward, in 2014, the debt to GDP level had come down to 70%. So it can be done, but it can be done only with the macro numbers being taken care of. In the last 5 years, the rupee depreciation alone cost Sri Lanka 1.8 trillion rupees, which got added to our debt. The higher interest rates added 1.4 trillion rupees. Already, we have taken care of those two most difficult parts of that equation. So we are on more benign waters, but at the same time, the shock is not over. We have to go through some pain. We may have sometimes curtailed some projects that we had originally committed ourselves to, but we are doing that with the intention of getting back to normal once we are stronger. We got to be strong first in order to attend to some of the area that we are working on. Even when you get into the aircraft, they tell you in case there is a reduction in the air pressure, these nice masks will fall. Of course, today we all have masks. But when the masks fall, they say, first wear yours before you attend to your child's. So you got to be strong first. So as a country, we got to look after our macro fundamentals, become strong, then we can look after the rest of the people who are not in that kind of shape as right now. We have only 53% of the people of our country having water on tap. We have 47% more to go. And that's one of the commitments that President Gotabaya Rajapaksa has given to the people of our country. And we are working on that. We need to make sure that those are delivered. We also need to make sure that the 100,000 kilometers of road in all parts of the country are developed. And that's another commitment we have given to the people. We got to work on that. 14 districts out of the 25 districts of our country have a human-elephant conflict. And that can be a huge stress for the people in those areas. And it is a great stress. We got to deal with that too. So these are the other factors, other than the business factors that we have to deal with, because once we get the businesses right, we got to make sure that our country's people are also cared for and looked after. So there is a lot of challenges, but I'm glad to see you all committing yourselves to the growth of our country, to the growth of your companies, and I would want to congratulate all of you for the attempts that you have made to take us forward in that fashion. So I want to congratulate the incoming chairman as well as the incoming committee and wish you all success and hope that together we can go on this journey so that we can truly bring prosperity to our people. Thank you very much.